Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And unfortunately, not joining me this week, battling a sickness, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto Grinders. He'll be back next week, but this week we're talking bets for the Shriners Children's 500 at Phoenix Raceway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Las Vegas, Kyle Larson held off a hard-charging Tyler Reddick to take Larson's first win of the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season, meaning Chevrolet has swept the winner's circle so far in each of the first 3 points-paying races. Ryan Blaney rounded out the podium with that third-place finish, and that was enough to put him into second place in the point standings behind Kyle Larson, who is currently leading the point standings. So normally this is where I would ask Stevie his thoughts on the race, but hey, I was at the race and I thought it was a fantastic race. Really enjoyed the atmosphere at the race. I thought the racing product was really good. Definitely you could run 2, 3, even 4 wide at times on the restarts. And then as the field kind of sorted itself out after the restarts, we saw some passing, and that's what you like to see. The faster cars were able to pass. We saw some guys have issues go to the back, come back to the front, namely Tyler Reddick, of course, who finished second. He had a relatively slow pit stop, which set him back far into the field, and he made his way nicely through the field once again. So thought Vegas was a great race. Good to see the new Toyota and the new Ford bodies in action. Certainly Toyota looked really good. Ford, maybe not quite as good, but Ryan Blaney still pulled off that third place finish. So I think we're in for another great season between these 3 manufacturers. But that's enough of a review of Las Vegas. It is time to talk about the Shriners Children's 500 at Phoenix Raceway. Phoenix is a 1-mile track. It's kind of flatter. We tend to call it a flat track, a short flat track, since it is 1 mile and more flatly banked. And Phoenix does, of course, race like that. You do see the drivers that tend to be better at shorter, flatter tracks shine at Phoenix. So Phoenix does have the ability to race multiple grooves. You can run way down below the white line. You can run medium on the track. You can run high on the track, and it makes for some good racing. But also, we have seen in the next-gen era the ability to aero block the driver running second. And, of course, that's what Ross Chastain did to Ryan Blaney last year in the championship race at Phoenix. Ross Chastain won that race. Ryan Blaney finished second, but by virtue of being the highest finishing championship driver of the 4, Ryan Blaney won the championship. But we did see some aero blocking. That leads me to the next topic. We have some rules changes here for Phoenix. So NASCAR has changed the diffuser on the back of the car. They've removed some streaks from underneath the diffuser there. That is designed to lower the downforce that the diffuser has been producing. In compensation, they've raised the rear spoiler 1 inch to 3 inches. So while it is adding some downforce back, it's not adding all the downforce back, and it's also shifting the distribution of the downforce. Drivers have said, they were able to slide it in a little bit more during the test back in December, which is another topic I'm going to talk about when we're trying to handicap Phoenix. So maybe the aero blocking goes away a little bit. We also have a new tire. Goodyear is bringing a thicker tread that is designed to, it also will have a little bit of a softer compound, so it'll be designed to provide more grip, but then fall off as well without falling off so much that the tires actually end up blowing or wearing to the cords. So I think this is another nice change that NASCAR and Goodyear have worked hand in hand to bring together. So hopefully we'll see some really good racing here at Phoenix, which hopefully is a sign of good things to come at the shorter flat tracks this year. But I do want to mention that test, because back in December, there was a test at Phoenix Raceway, and all 3 manufacturers got to bring 2 cars each. So there's 6 cars doing the test, and Toyota brought their new body and Ford brought their new body. So that was the Toyotas and the Fords testing their new bodies and testing all these different possible aero changes, tire changes. And the one thing that remained consistent, so Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing sent Chris Buescher to the test as one of the 2 Ford cars. And they actually posted 3 videos on YouTube of mini 50 lap races. And one thing I noticed is regardless of which day it was, what the conditions on the track were, what the conditions were with the tires or the body, or I should say the aero changes, Christopher Bell always stood out. He always was fastest in every session, pulled away often in these little mini races from the leaders. Towards the end of the 50-lap race on one of them, he was a half track ahead of Chris Buescher. You couldn't even see him on Chris Buescher's in-car camera anymore. So I do think that's one thing I'm taking into consideration was those tests at Phoenix in December. Now, I'm not going to overweigh it, but it's certainly, as you'll see in my picks, it is influencing my picks. I think Toyota is going to be very strong this week. So with that said, how are we capping Phoenix? Well, mostly we're relying on track history and track type history. I mentioned shorter, flatter tracks. That would be Phoenix, Richmond, which has really high tire fall off. So while an okay comparison, it's maybe not the best. New Hampshire is a 1 mile flat track that may compare favorably to Phoenix. You could use a little bit of Martinsville. I know there's some drivers who are good at both Phoenix and Martinsville, and possibly Gateway, although Gateway goes into that intermediate package. So tough to say there. But, this shorter, flatter driving style is definitely something we're going to be looking for. And then we're going to be looking to see which teams and manufacturers have performed well here at Phoenix specifically, with me, of course, giving a little bit of a mental boost to Toyota, especially the Joe Gibbs and 2311 Toyotas, based off how Christopher Bell did in that test. So there's a little bit of a preview of Phoenix Raceway. It is time to dive into our bets. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around Phoenix. That's 4 turns, 1 pick from each of us. I will be talking about Stevie's turn picks as well, and then my pick in each turn before we drive into victory lane. So time to wave the green flag on the Shriners Children's 500 and dive into turn 1. Okay, turn 1. Both Stevie and I are on the same pick here. We also have our same pick for victory lane, but in turn 1, we're both on Toyota as the winning manufacturer. I talked about it with him on Slack yesterday. If you got around 2-1, plus 190, plus 180, those are all fine prices, but we are all both Stevie and I are pretty high on Toyota as the winning manufacturer. Not only did Christopher Bell look amazing at the test, but just in general, they have a strong stable of drivers at the shorter flat tracks. Christopher Bell has always been known for his prowess at shorter, flatter tracks. Martin Truex Jr., incredibly strong at shorter, flatter tracks. Denny Hamlin, strong everywhere. I mean, as is Truex and Bell. And Ty Gibbs has wins at some of these shorter, flatter tracks in the Xfinity Series. He hasn't had the results in the Cup Series, certainly, at Phoenix, but to me, that's a small sample size aberration. Then we look at 2311. Tyler Reddick has posted some really strong finishes at Phoenix, 2 inside the top 3. Bubba Wallace, this has been a decent track for him. So I think Toyota, winning manufacturer, I think they're going to be the team, the manufacturer to beat. Plus, we can throw in Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek. I don't think they'll be quite as strong as the Gibbs or 2311 cars, but hey, if they're hanging around the top 10 and we get some late race craziness, you never know what could happen. So turn 1, Stevie and I are on Toyota as the winning manufacturer for this race. So that is turn 1. Let's roll the corner into turn 2. All right, turn 2. I'm going to start with Stevie's pick here first. Stevie is going with Ryan Preece for a top 10 finish at plus 350. And I think this makes a lot of sense. Ryan Preece, when I was given a little bit of a preview there at the beginning of Phoenix, he's one of those guys that does shine at the shorter, flatter tracks. If you look at the first Martinsville race last year, he led the most laps in that race. Going back to the Clash last year even, he had the best car in the Clash before some late problems there. Last year, he also had a top 5 at Richmond and at Phoenix last year, which, of course, is the track we're racing at this weekend. 12th and 14th place finishes. So he certainly picks it up. Stewart-Haas Racing as a whole seems to elevate their game at the shorter, flatter tracks. So Ryan Preece, top 10 finish at plus 350 is Stevie's turn 2 pick. For my turn 2 pick, I am going with Christopher Bell to finish ahead of Kyle Busch. You can get that at minus 112. And for me, I think this is kind of a slam dunk for me. I expect Christopher Bell to be faster than Kyle Busch. He was faster than Rowdy at both Phoenix races last year. He finished ahead of him in the first Phoenix race. And then the second Phoenix race, while Christopher Bell didn't finish ahead of Kyle Busch, he was faster prior to his brake rotor exploding, which ended up costing Christopher Bell his run at the championship there in Phoenix. And then Kyle Busch, he's always been so strong at Phoenix, but the last 7 Phoenix races, he has 7 straight finishes outside the top 6, when he was a guy consistently finishing inside the top 5, the top 3, winning some of these Phoenix races. So 7 straight outside the top 6 is not what you want to see from Kyle Busch. Both races last year, he had an 8th and a 25th place finish at Phoenix. Now, certainly that 25th wasn't representative of his true speed, but he was still slower than Bell in my flags metric from that Phoenix race, right? Flags being field level adjusted green speed, where I'm trying to compare lap by lap how cars are doing when they are in healthy condition, right? So if you're blowing a tire and hitting the wall, you're no longer in healthy condition. You're out of the race. And so I'm no longer comparing Bell to other drivers after that point, for example. So for me, Christopher Bell over Kyle Busch, then you add in what we saw at the test where Bell was clearly the dominant car at the test. I like Christopher Bell to finish ahead of Kyle Busch in turn 2. So 2 turns down before we head to the backstretch and get into turn 3. I want to give you all a quick heads up. North Carolina is launching sports betting this Monday, March 11th. So if you are in the Tar Heel State, take advantage of the best sign-up offers across every sports book. Just follow the link in this episode description. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe. That'll help out the podcast as well. And all the North Carolina offers will be all in one place. Just check out the link in this episode description. I also want to remind you, Running Hot is proudly presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $158 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, 2 turns down, 2 turns to go. We're going to dive into turn 3. All right, for our turn 3 picks, we're going to go to 2 winning bets. And Stevie has Denny Hamlin to win at 10-1. Certainly, if you're on the Toyota train, you got to like Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin is one of the best drivers, obviously, in the series right now, but also one of the best drivers at the shorter, flatter tracks. If we just look at speed over the last half of the season, Denny Hamlin had the best average speed at these shorter, flatter tracks. So even though he didn't actually win any of the shorter, flatter races, his consistent performance across all of them is certainly why we like Denny Hamlin. And then add in, of course, his victory at the Clash to kick off the preseason here in that new Toyota body. And, you know, I do think Denny Hamlin is going to be a factor in this race. Personally, I have not bet him at 10-1, but I definitely get why Stevie is on him at 10-1. For my turn 3 pick, I'm going to go to a different JGR, I should say a different Toyota driver in that Joe Gibbs affiliated, kind of crew here. And that's Tyler Reddick with 2311. To win the race at 16-1. I did get him at 18-1. It's shortened to 16-1. Still like 16-1, but that's probably right around the limit of where I would bet this at. Technically, my model doesn't show value on Tyler Reddick at 16-1. However, I'm willing to override that simply because I like this situation here. We saw the test with Christopher Bell, who is essentially a team car to Tyler Reddick in that December test, and Christopher Bell was so dominant. Add in the tire compound and tread changes where we're going to get more fall off, and I do think that benefits Tyler Reddick as well. We saw how good he was in the long run at Las Vegas because there was tire fall off at Las Vegas. He was catching Kyle Larson there at the end for the race win. And Tyler Reddick has performed at Phoenix, 2 straight years. At Phoenix, he has finished inside the top 3 at this very race. So I think this is a good spot for Tyler Reddick. I think a lot of the aero changes, the tire changes are going to benefit him. Add in the new Toyota body, and I think this is a great spot to bet Tyler Reddick at a track where he hasn't won at, but I do think eventually he will grab his win here. You know, he always reminds me of Kyle Larson, and we have seen Kyle Larson come to be really good at Phoenix as well, grab his own wins at Phoenix, and I think it is possibly Tyler Reddick's time to do the same. So that is our turn 3 picks. We're going Denny Hamlin 10-1 for Stevie, Tyler Reddick 16-1 for me in turn 3. That means we got one turn left. Let's roll the corner into turn 4. All right, one final turn, and we're sticking with the Toyota theme. It is all Toyota, it seems like. You know, we did have, we did have that Ryan Preece top 10 bet from Stevie there from the Ford stable, but Stevie's turn 4 pick is Bubba Wallace in that 2311 Toyota to finish inside the top 10 at plus 135. And, you know, like Ryan Preece, Bubba Wallace had some pretty solid finishes at Phoenix last year. You know, if we look at Bubba Wallace, he finished 10th and 14th in the 2 Phoenix races, whereas Ryan Preece finished 12th and 14th. But then you add in, of course, the test factor, and I think this just elevates Bubba even more. So I'm with Stevie. I think plus 135 is a good price. It might be a little thin, but I do think it is some value. So Bubba Wallace plus 135 is Stevie's top 10 pick, his turn 4 pick. That means we got one pick left for me, and I'm going to take Martin Truex Jr. to get it done at 12-1. And look, just like Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., he is great everywhere. And, you know, this is a guy that especially has shined at some of the shorter, flatter tracks throughout his career. Martinsville, for example, multiple wins. New Hampshire is always a great track for Martin Truex Jr., and he did win at New Hampshire last year. Also, just in the second half of the season, we talked about it. You know, Chevy kind of fell off at the shorter, flatter tracks. Toyota really came on. And then you add in the body change, the test here, and I just can't get off of Toyota. They looked so good to close the year in 2023 at the shorter, flatter tracks, and now they're expected to improve a little bit more. So I think Toyota's the manufacturer to beat. I love taking Martin Truex Jr. at 12-1. I do show model value on this one pretty significantly. I'm in like the 8 to 8.5% range on Martin Truex Jr. So definitely up from, you know, around 7.7% implied at 12-1. So definitely like Martin Truex Jr. to have a shot at the win this weekend, and overall just that Toyota train. So we've completed a lap around Phoenix Raceway. That means there is one thing left to do, and that is drive into victory lane. And I think you all can probably guess where this is going. We're going to another Toyota driver, Christopher Bell, 12-1 to win the race. This is the guy I just cannot get enough of. I saw those test races. I saw how far he checked out. It didn't matter what they were running in those test races. Christopher Bell looked the best. Ryan Blaney did look good. He looked second best for sure, but couldn't quite keep up pace with Bell, especially over a really long run. And, you know, it did look a little bit hard to pass on the short run, but once we get this aero package figured out, a new tire, maybe a little bit easier to pass in the short run. But over the long run, Christopher Bell in those tests smoked everybody. And then you just add in the fact that he's Christopher Bell. He is another driver that is great at short, flat tracks. He has a win at New Hampshire. He won at Martinsville. You know, he's a guy that just gets it done at the shorter, flatter tracks. So, you know, a win in the Xfinity Series at Phoenix, for example, multiple wins at Richmond. So this is a great track type for Christopher Bell, and look at how good he was in the test. Once again, I have model value here on Christopher Bell at 12-1. So Stevie is on this with me. That's why it is our victory lane pick. So both Stevie and I on Christopher Bell, 12-1 to win the Shriners Children's 500. And that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Shriners Children's 500 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. We'll be back this time next week as we talk bets for the Food City 500 back on the concrete at Bristol Motor Speedway. On behalf of Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back next week on Running Hot from Action Network.